Jayashree Venkataraman is the founder CEO of Appreiz. Appreiz is an employee engagement platform that connects social recognition and performance management. Jayashree has worked in leadership roles in large companies like GE and Microsoft as well. So, we spoke about what are the components of a healthy and happy workforce and workplace and how to identify one. We also spoke about how founders should think about the well being of not just their teams but themselves. What should managers do when they get indications of anxiety or stress in their teams? If you're a founder or a people leader who cares about building a happy workforce or are just curious about the role of recognition in building a happy workforce, you must listen to this episode. This is the CTQ Smartcast, where we have conversations about upleveling, deliberate practice, and getting future relevant. Welcome, Jayashree. Welcome to the CTQ Smartcast.
Hi, good morning. Nice to be here.
Yeah. So, I'm going to start with a slightly tricky one, but I guess right down your alley, Jayashree. So, what are really the components of a healthy and happy workplace and workforce, and what are the signs that we should look for to sort of identify a happy workforce and workplace?
Right. See, when you talk about a workplace which is healthy and happy workplace, right? First of all, you will see the workforce which is very, very committed to what they are doing, right? And they are, in terms of, you will see them, workforce is really taking ownership. They all know what the shared purpose is for what they are working on. And when they interact with each other, you see that they are actually forming good relationships at the workplace. It's not like we are trying to pull down each other or not, right? They are really happy. Everybody knows that they are working towards a common shared purpose. And they like to maintain that work relationships with each other. And they're really genuinely happy to be there and do that positive work which they're trying to do. So that is what you will see as the workforce is really very important. When we talk about the workplace becomes healthy and happy when the workforce is really happy and healthy. And how will the workforce will be happy? Then it has to come from the top, right? The leaders will have to create that culture. Culture is very, very important when you look at it, right? The leaders will have to create that culture where people are genuinely open and transparent, and they know what everyone is working for, and they are really engaged in what they are doing. And the culture sets the really the it's the basic, right? Culture and the leaders walking the talk and being there and genuinely being part of what they are doing and make the workforce follow in what their shared purpose is. So that's what makes the workplace very healthy and happy.
Right. Yeah, I think this is great. Very concise way of actually defining these. I'm going to put a slightly different question here, Jayashree. So, what happens in a company when the workforce is not happy and not engaged? What are the signs that people can see? And what should people, I'm just trying to figure these things out so that people know that, yeah, this is a good, happy workplace and this is not a good, happy workplace. This is the place that I want to avoid and this is the place I want to be in for both founders as well as for say somebody who's joining the company, not at a founder level but as a member of the workforce.
Workforce, right? So what you need to look for is, right, when people are not engaged and people are not happy. For one, they are also causing distractions in the workplace, right? So they are not working, first of all. Then they are also disturbing the others who work. And then statistics shows that, when they are not engaged, like, at the job, 70% of their time is spent on thinking about the next job they are going to do. So your productivity is automatically gone, right? When the employees are not engaged. So what are the signs you need to look for is when they are not happy, they are not coming to the workplace at proper time, they are not taking ownership, they are not committed to what they are. You can give them deadlines, whatever you want to, but still at the end of the day, they may finish it, but is there a quality in it? There is no quality. When somebody does their best, when they are happy, then you really see that showing up in their work, right? So if it is not there, then you know there is something going on. And actually, managers, in my opinion, should also be trained to be like coaches, right?
Hmm.
We always promote the managers based on their technical skills, but we don't really look at train them on some of these soft skills where they can be coaches, and they should be able to identify if the employees are unhappy. Say if somebody doesn't show up on time for a period of time, he was really good employee till for the last month or so, and suddenly you see them not engaging so much, and there is a reason why that person is unhappy. It could be due to different reasons. It could be personal, or it could be the workplace conflicts, the team dynamic. Something is causing the person to behave that way. And that is where I think the managers will have to look out for these signs. Not say, okay, this person is not performing. At the end of the year, you give them a C or a D and let them go. But that is not what it is. You have to watch out for the signs. And that is why nowadays you talk about the pulse surveys and all that, where you really know whether the employees are working towards what they want. And so you need to watch out for these signs. Managers will have to be trained to watch out for these signs to see if the employees are really unhappy. Other things is attrition. Attrition is a very good sign if your employees are unhappy, right? So that is the number one thing which you see immediately. Employees are going outside the door. Even with the great resignations, right? They found two reasons why employees are leaving. One is burnout. The second is lack of recognition. And if there is no recognition in the workplace, then employees are automatically going to go look for another place. So when they're not recognized, automatically everybody needs that little motivation to keep going. And if you don't provide that, they become unhappy. They see what's the point in me doing this, right? So then they will walk out of the workplace. For the founders itself, right, you need to create that workplace where you find people coming in and working. And there are a lot of startups, even I've been part of those startups, where you have these different perks being available, right? Perks is one thing. You cannot hold a person in the company for a long time with just the perks. Perks could be like right from organic fruits to pool tables to anything. You may have all that. But how is the work culture? How is the environment? Is it really making me feel that I am part of it? Am I being part of it? Is it making me happy? I should be at the end morning, I should be able to get up and come to the workplace, right? So that should be the thing. That is when you will see I am happy at the workplace and it's a work. So that's when you see that for the managers, when you see that the employees are showing some signs of disengagement, then you know for sure that they are unhappy and you need to figure out why. Instead of saying, okay, give the work to somebody else and let the person go, that doesn't work that way. It could be something where a small correction within the organization also will make the employee work very hard, committed for you, right? So that is what you need to watch out for, these signs where employees are showing some signs of disengagement or like an unhappiness, and they will start being alone, right? That is also another thing you would see when employees are not when they are not happy at the workplace. They are not talking to people. They are just trying to be silos, or there's only very few people they interact with. So those are all some of the signs you need to look out for. That is where that sometimes you call as the organizational networks. Those help to figure out where if there's somebody siloed, then you know that is a sure case of attrition going to happen, right? So those things help.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of things to unpack there. Other thing that struck me and something that we've been talking a lot about these days is culture debt. Right. So basically, founders or companies taking some decisions with a very short and immediate term focus, knowing fully well that this is not the right thing to do in the long run. Right. But they are being driven by business reasons or some deliverables or some external deadline, because of which they end up doing something, and then at that moment it's a very small deviation from the culture, but over a period of time it festers, right? It keeps growing, it
Yes,
amplifies. The problem also scales as you're scaling the company. So
correct.
how do founders sort of watch out for this kind of a culture, that yes, this is the point of no return, I should try to correct this before things go out of hand? How what would your
The
advice be?
founders, I think it's all it's on your value system. I think it fundamentally comes to the values which the founder believes in. If you are very strong on the values, then you will not deviate, what irrespective of whether there is a pressure from the whoever is funded or the environment or whatever. If you believe in the value and they are, if you're strong in your principles and the values, then you will not deviate. If you deviate, then as you said, it will, you can never come back,
Right.
right? So it keeps on going, and it's like one time, then the next time it goes on, and then there is no comeback. And I think that is where, if the founders are really fundamentally believe in what their values are and they have the values correctly, I think that is what will be the right thing.
Right. Yeah. 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 And when you talk about employee experience, right?
Mm.
How should founders be thinking about things like employee experience and employee well-being as well, right? Mental health has become a big buzzword, I would say, in the last 2 years. When I say buzzword, I'm very deliberately calling it a buzzword because everyone talks about well-being. What you are doing is what should really matter, right? So how should founders be thinking about employee experience and employee well-being, and in some cases their own well-being as well, right? Because they are
Yes.
also undergoing so much of stress and tension.
Correct, correct. That's a good point, actually, about their own well being. And today morning, I was reading an article which said about HR, right? HR is been in the, they have been helping people transition through this pandemic, and then they are doing, implementing all these well-being programs, but then their health is really suffering, right? So, as you said, yeah, founders which will have to, because many times with the startups, what happens is we get so engrossed in delivery of the product. The customer experience becomes the number one, right? First product has to be ready, that the customer experience, we focus on that so much that we tend to forget the employees, right? Only when the employees experience is good, it is going to translate in the customer experience. Recently, I don't know, I read in LinkedIn, I think somebody had posted where, again, an employee being part of a startup and did everything well, but forgot his health, take care of the health. And then that kind of led to, later on, after a few years, he started realizing that, okay, the startup no longer exists, and the designs or whatever he did, the code he did doesn't exist anymore, but his health has gone for a toss, right?
Hmm.
So that is where I think founders will have to be, especially if the last 2 years has changed our lives in many ways. And the health, as you said, mental health has become the buzzword. But it's not just about the mental wealth, because I've been talking to CHROs and talking about what the well-being means. And the well-being itself is not just the mental well-being, it is also the complete well-being, holistic well-being. When I say holistic well-being, it's about the financial well-being of, because the financials also causes a lot of stress and anxiety to the employees in the workplace. So that again translates into productivity. So how to manage the finances, that is also a big part of a well-being, financial well-being, physical well-being, mental well-being. How do you take care of it, right? So well-being, when you talk about, companies says, oh, we create awareness programs, and you just bring in one or two experts and then they talk about how you need to take care of yourself and all that. But self care alone is not enough. There are studies which shows that self care alone is not enough. The companies need to create that culture where that well-being is important, and that is what they say is as the founders or the leaders themselves now, especially because the things have changed so much, is to have conversations with employees, not just always about the work, but also just check in, right? How are you doing? And what's like, just have a casual conversation about their well being. So that needs to come between the founders as well as the employees to have that conversation, and so that they can identify if there are any, because many time when people are suffering they don't really talk about it also, so that you need to find out again. This goes to where you see when somebody's productivity is going down, or you see some signs of them disengaging. It could be due to either their well-being also. Many times you don't know, all physical ailments are not physically visible also, right? So when they are suffering, there could be some suffering which you don't know. So how do you have that conversation? So the leaders will also need to know to have those conversations with the employees. So, in talk about how founders can create that culture right from the beginning, have a culture where employee experience is important right from onboarding them. How do you make sure you have touch points, the frequent touch points with the employees, and how do you keep them engaged? You can have different activities, or those are extra things, but fundamentally it's a culture, and the leadership is the should be believe in saying, hey, I need to have my employees experience should be good, so that our customer experience, employee experience translates into customer experience. And when they are dealing with the customer, they are actually representing them and the company together well to the customer. So you have to take care of your employees. Employees, your people, right? I won't know what you want to call word asset, but it is like employees are your fundamental backbone of the company, right? So you need to take care of them well, and well-being is very important. And people do realize it after this 2 years, right? Because of the pandemic, it has become very important. And you see that people, because I was talking to some HR person, and one of the things which came up was earlier when employees were going through a divorce, it would be they would tell HR, and HR say, okay, you take care of it and you can come to the workplace, right? So they just give them leave, extra leave, or whatever is required. But now, because the work and the life has integrated so much between work from home and everything, when an employee is going through that kind of a personal turmoil, they company has to hold him also. Company has to give him the support. So that is how the things have changed in the last 2 years. So it is no longer a personal issue. It is responsible for the company to give him that space to go through that and support him in whatever way the employee is going through that personal issue, right? So that is how things have changed, and that is why well-being is becoming very important. And in startups, when you have small teams, it is sometimes you overlook it because you're so engrossed in getting that product out and having that so many customers and all that. And you sometimes these are okay, this could be nice to have, but then I don't have, must have. But now it is becoming important, especially because the attrition, you see this great resignation happening, and everybody is going to small companies, startups, to the big organizations are suffering. And this is one of the things which can hold your employees together, and you can grow together as an organization.
So, Jayashree, this is great. You've spoken about well-being and how founders should be thinking about employee experience. We spoke about some of the perks and benefits earlier. We just spoke about it very briefly. I want you to spend some more time on that. What is the role of incentives and perks? How important is it? Is it just a hygiene factor? How much should founders be giving importance to things like swag at the time of joining, and the all the other benefits that we've talked about? Is it important? If it is, how important should they be?
So the incentives are important, right? Incentives are important because when you when you get something done, when you finish a job or a milestone are done, there has to be a tangible acknowledgement, and only an incentive is a tangible acknowledgement. And this incentives, what I've seen is, it doesn't always have to translate into something big. I know now startups are going the other way. I mean, it's like they're giving grand bonuses when they sign in, and or cars or whatever when they sign in, but that is to attract the employees. But what is going to keep them working for you, right? So then you need to have some kind of an incentives. Yes, the perks, when you have a pool table or whatever, it just creates some breakout times for them, and then they will come and enjoy it. But at the end of the day, when they get something done, when they work, when they finish something, or when they have achieved something, they expect a tangible acknowledgement. And that tangible acknowledgement, it can be in terms of incentives, like, coupons, or like, some like coupons either to restaurants or to buy things or whatever it is. It could be that. Or what I've also seen companies very successfully uses, it not necessarily will have to have some monetary value also. It can also be non-monetary. It could be like comp off, or take a day with your family, or things like that, or having a dinner with the leadership team, or in US, like a prime parking spot also works, right? So like that, non-monetary also works. But what is important is you have to have certain small incentives which happen when there is a tangible outcome or acknowledgement needs to be given, because you don't want them to wait for a year to find out what all they did well, right? In the traditional performance management, that's what is happening. But when you have these small incentives to acknowledge their work which they have completed, it keeps them motivated and they try to do more. So incentives are very important. But the perks, as I said, it's again, it depends. Some of them says just because you have what the companies, or just because you put in a new pool table or something, your employee engagement score doesn't go up. Not everybody is going to go and play at the pool table also, right? But then you can have certain hygiene factors. It depends on the demographics. Again, what I advise the companies also, like when you're deciding on what is like the rewards program you want to, it depends on the demographics of the employees. When they are really young, what is it that you, and if it is multi-generational workforce, then what works, right? So now we are coming into where it is also about personalized experiences and all that. So you need to look at what your organization demographics, and think of what will make them, small incentives will work to keep them going and motivated, so they know it is real time, it is immediate which is happening, rather than waiting for a long time to see what's going to happen.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. That was good, and it brings us to the next question. I wanted you to talk a bit about Appreiz, your company, and what inspired you to start Appreiz to start
Okay. So what inspired me to start Appraise was, I was in Microsoft before I started Appraise. So I think the first year Satya Nadella became the CEO. He started, instead of the company meeting, he started doing the worldwide hackathon to have the, and I was leading the whole pan India hackathon. And at that time, it struck me like it's time for me to go do start something on my own, rather than, I've been in GE, then Microsoft, been in all leadership roles. I said it's time for me to go do something on my own. And during that process, I interacted with a lot of millennials in the organization. And uh, and then I also had done a lot of vertical roles across the organization income. And when you work across vertical, you will see that recognition is not, your manager doesn't know what you do all the time. The recognition has to come from different stakeholders and all that. And having worked with millennials also, I found that they also need on the spot recognition. Because when you look at millennials and the Gen Z's, right, they grow up in what we call uh, as a star generation. Like they get a star for participation in school, right?
it? Right.
And when you come to the workplace, the expectation is also to get that validation as they are working, right? To have something which tells them that they are doing good. Because when we are growing up, when I was growing up, it used to be you have to be the top three to get this recognition, but not anymore. Everybody gets a star when they are in this. So when you need to look at that, that is when it triggered something that there is a gap in this space. And with especially the younger generation growing with the social media, like is a recognition. When you post something and you get a like, it is a recognition, right? So that type of a thing which needs to be there in the workplace, and that is why I started Appreiz. And Appreiz is started as just as a social recognition platform, especially because when you get recognized at the workplace, when the normal was to get an email from your manager saying you have done job, or at the best you will get a certificate, right? So that used to be the case. And then but now we are in the world where we want to share everything with our friends and professional network. So sharing on the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and all becomes very important. And so that is why I built this whole thing called social recognition. And Appraise is it has evolved into complete employee engagement platform now. But underlying theme is social recognition is the underlying theme. And one of the key things which we do, especially when employees face customers, partners, and suppliers, and to get external recognition is not easy in the current situation, right? You'll send a survey, it takes time, it doesn't come easily. If you're a bad employee, you will get immediate feedback, but then if there you don't. So that is one of the key things which we did in Appraise, was also to get from external stakeholders also to make it easy to get recognized on the, it could be on the social media, which is easy, and you can fill it in, or you do it a separate URL as well. So the external recognition, the reason I'm talking about external recognition is also internal recognition. There is a way you do it, and then it gets published. We can share it with Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and you can also pull in. So it becomes a 360 recognition, right? And once you have a 360 recognition, some companies used to spend time on doing a 360 survey, right? Now you have something which is real time, immediate, with whomever you're working, you can get the recognition you need for the job you have done. And that kind of helps you keep going, get you motivated. And when you tie it up with the rewards, then it kind of like, you see small incentives come in, you get motivated to do more. And also to convert those recognitions you get, because what Appraise does is, it is not saying good job, because if you just say good job, it doesn't mean much to the person who receives it. But if you say, hey, good job on demonstrating project management skill or risk management skill, then they know what you are recognizing them for. And also you can translate it into your strength. So you know you did well. So it is also play on your strengths, right? So how do you play on your strength? So that is how you get to know your strength. And Appraise does that. And then with also you can add in like what context and what outcome, then it gives a meaningful recognition to the person who receives it. And for the company itself, it creates a lot of analytics, so you can know who's demonstrated what value or a competency or a skill very well. And for talent identification or talent promotability, you can look at those dashboards and exactly see what you have and find the right person. So that is the fundamental theme on which Appraise is built. And so Appraise, as I said, it's like my thing is everybody wants to do their best in the workplace. And as a company, it is our thing to give them that positive environment to work on, and then they will do their best. So that's the Appraise is built on what I call as the social recognition, because for me that is where it lays the foundation to even to your performance. And we actually tie this recognition to the performance. And ours is the only platform I can say which also does feed forward rather than feedback. So feed forward is what you want the person to work on rather than looking back and saying this did not work well. So then the 360 feed forward and the 360 appraise, I call recognition as appraise only. So they go together and makes your performance management to be continuous. It is also more objective, and it is based on what others are saying, right? Rather, and you get a collective, like a 360 view of the person's strengths or values or competencies they have demonstrated well. So it makes it objective.
Yes, yes. This is really great, and I'm speaking from our own experience because when we go and work with companies on their culture and values, one thing that we talk to them about is build your internal mythology, right?
Mm.
How do I live in this country or in this culture is what has been passed on through all our mythological stories, right? And every religion has their own holy book and set of stories, and that's what sort of tells people how to live, what is the right way to behave, and all of that. So we keep asking what is your mythology of your company, and there are stories inside. People will share them anecdotally, so there are great stories, but then they say, oh, we've never captured them. You say, you have already actually done this, right? Because you have given some spot award or things like that. Now we just want to concretize that story, make it more tangible, and actually make that part of the consciousness for everyone. Some companies do a great job of that, so I can see that if with a system like this we can immediately say that, okay, if you are valuing these kind of behaviors, go talk to these four people who have actually displayed this kind of behavior, take that anecdote and then circulate it through your internal Slack channels, use it as part of your hiring and all of that. So yeah, I can see great value in what you're capturing as a base information for people to sort of propagate the culture and values that they're talking about.
Right. See, if when I let them share the things to the Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, some companies will come back and say, "Oh, I don't want employees to share the recognition they get there." But you're spending time on building your company's presence on the social media. Right away, if you share, let the employee share that this value is being valued in this company, then you don't have to do that. You can attract your future employees through that. They know exactly what value is being recognized in the company, and they would come. And this is a great way of also looking at how employees are demonstrating the values of the company, because that is the fundamental thing, values and the competencies of, like, how are they demonstrating throughout, right? And that, because sometimes when companies do this, oh, value celebration week or value week, right, when they roll out the values, they do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
After that, what happens? Is every
Exactly.
employee living that, or even the leaders? This
Correct.
actually tell, if I see my CEO demonstrating some value, I can go recognize that,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
means it shows that leader is walking the talk.
Right.
So
Yeah. So we also read, when we were reading about Appreiz, that there is, something called as pulse, where you sort of, figure out whether people are happy or sad. We spoke about the recognition, but now that you have this information, what do you think, or what do you advise managers to do about this information? That, yeah, I found out that, one of my team members is stressed or anxious. What are some of the things, actionable things that a leader can do at every level?
So the employee pulse, what you read is, what we do is it's at the manager level. I don't capture it at an individual level, right?
Okay. Hmm.
So these pulse surveys are based on, actually it's based on the 6 questions of Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, where he says
Right.
employee engagement has to come from the employee. Well, the company can do whatever it is, but at the end of the day, employee has to get engaged. And so this basically, did I do my best to do today, right? Or do I have clear goals? Am I happy? Or did I build a positive relationship at the workplace? So it kind of tells whether I am happy or not. So what we do with the pulse surveys, we show the trend of the, at the manager level, we show a smiley or a frowny how your team is doing. So, and also at each question, you can actually drill to each question and see whether you're red, yellow, green. So it is and you can also see the trend, how you have done, whether some suddenly where you see it go down or what is causing it. But what we want the managers to do at that time when they see that the pulse is really bad, right? What is it that? Then we'll have to drill it, and basically it will give you the questions which they can drill it. And now, especially what I see is if them you see them anxious or sad, you said, right? And it could be because of different reasons, especially now with the current situation where we are in. Especially people have gone through grief and everything in their family and all that. You will find due to different reasons. So what we also advise is since the well-being, as you said, we are also transitioning into the well-being space, and what we advise is there is something called, for the managers we need to train them first, or it need not be always the managers, it could be ambassadors in your team or whatever you call them, and they should be able to at least pick on, identify certain signs. If there is employee who's really sad, why is the employee, and they could be the go-to person for the employee to go figure out, to talk to, right? Or find out what is causing. And of course, after that, you need to have a proper well-being coach talk to the person, or what needs it. But at least you should have certain ambassadors or champions, or you should call them as what you to find out, or the team feels as a go-to person to go talk to them if there is anything bothering them. So they need to figure out what is causing and then take the corrective action. So, and these, the pulse survey need not be done only at a particular time, right? These are ongoing surveys. So you can actually ask 2 questions a day or 3 questions a day. You can do daily, weekly, monthly. You can configure it the way you want. So it kind of gives you a snapshot at that time. Or if you're doing it weekly, you know how the trend is also going every week and how employees are. So then you can make immediate corrective action and see what can be done to make them be, it is something bothering them, right? And that is why you see we also have what we called as a coaching module also inbuilt, where especially during the pandemic we introduced that, because anxiety can be because of different reasons. And so when people want to talk to somebody with a human intervention, then you can have them talk to, because many times what we have seen is companies will give you a EAP number, which is you can call a counselor and talk to if you want. But not everything needs to be discussed with the counselor. If it is my team plays dynamics which is causing me the anxiety in me, talking to a counselor will not help. Or it's a whole mental stigma, the taboo, social stigma, everything is there to talking to a counselor. So people don't use it. But if you have coaches within your organization, or you have a tie up with external coaches, or part of employee engagement solutions, which we give the coaching solution, both human intervention as well as some feeds, then it helps. And now we are talking a lot about mindfulness, right? And how can that help? How can that help this person to become from sad to a positive person? So you need to look at it, and this has to be continuous. So that is why don't do that is why it's called pulse, rather than the earlier we used to do this long employee engagement surveys, and then you analyze it for 3 months, and then you bring up action items, and then
By the time those people have left.
left. Exactly. So
Right.
that's what this pulse is for. So you need to do those corrective actions
Mm.
immediately.
Right. Yeah. 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 So, this is great. When founders, I'm sure many people who are listening to this will resonate with this, will understand this is, great. This is something that they have to start in their organization. How do they get started? Right. Is there a right time for, a kind of a solution tool where at what kind of team size, what kind of challenges would they be facing when they should do what? If you can
If
talk to me through that.
if the team size is less than 10, you're
Hmm.
probably going to know each other better. But
Correct.
I think so in my early days of startup, I had actually a 2-member organization started using my Appreiz, and they used it well. With them, they would talk about it and all that. But no, but if it is grows beyond 10, and especially if you're growing faster, and I think at any time recognition is very important for employee to continuously work, and especially when you have this in the startups, it is, we all know it is a stressful world, at least, right? The first, because we need to get the MVP out. Once we get then the customers, how do we get the customers and all that? So the employees are constantly working. And so if you put some things in place for their well-being, any team beyond 10, I would say 10, 15 is like, have something in place so that you are setting the culture also within the company. Because many times as you grow, then you're just hiring technical talent and all that, but you forget how to build a culture, right? So it is good to set the culture. So have that recognition culture, and then also the well-being, look after the employees well-being and look at it holistically. How, because as they come, if you're hiring fresh hires, right, then how do they also need to know about the financials and all that. And so things like that really help them. And so anything, any size after about 10, 15, maybe you can manage, you can have that personal touch. But after that, you will lose sight of who's there in the organization. So start doing anytime up, I would say more than 15, have some kind of a program to have that recognition and well-being there. And also look at the experience, because what happens is, especially in the startup world, after 2 years, people will start looking for another job,
Hmm.
right? If freshers coming into the organization, you groom them 2 years, they are looking for something else. So then how do you retain them? So then they should feel right from day one that experience and engagement with the company needs to be there. So they are committed with you with the shared purpose of where we are going as a startup. So we want to hold them, not by, even though you may give big things as that age, the monetary thing is very important too. They will jump easily from one company to another. But also, when you, the way you treat them, the way you're working with them throughout the 2 years will also hold them back. It's not that they find another company giving them 20,000, 25,000 more to jump to the other company. But there could be some experiences where they feel really part of the family that can hold them back, so your attrition can be less.
Right. Yeah. 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 So, coming to the last few questions, last section of our conversation here, Jayashree. Over the years, right? I mean, you've worked with very large, companies, and now you're running your own startup, and you're working with a lot of startups. So, across this whole gamut or spectrum, if I would say, what are the top three insights about workplace that because of your vantage point in observing these kind of organizations, what would they be? Basically, what are the three things about workplace that which others don't?
What I do. No, say if it is a people organization, right? Then so that is where people will really. And when I say it's a people organization, people are valued, and people are given the what they working for and then taken care of. Then people will stay with the company. Their attrition is low when compared with the other companies. Culture, leadership. Leadership and culture is the backbone, I would say, for any organization. For, see, even when I see companies which try to roll out these Appreiz or any other tool, if the leadership sets the tone and sets that culture of that, then it is really done well. You can see people engaging with the tool and using it. So in everything, I think culture and leadership is important, and leadership is help having good values, right? That again is very it's a key thing, right? Otherwise there is that whole thing when after a few years it falls apart. But then, so leadership and then values, and the value system of the company is really something which and workplace insights is, if you have the right uh, recognition or the reward system in place, also look at people. And that's why I said people organization, when they value the people is important. then you have people staying back with you than rather than leaving. So that is where I find that workplaces make a difference is the way they treat their employees, and employees have to be treated much far better than their customers. I say if you treat your employees better than your customers, you employees will treat your customers better.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think those are very key insights and also quite actionable in my opinion, because you can actually take those and start applying them in your organization as a founder. So what are some of the books, people, podcasts that have shaped your thinking over the years, and what would you recommend to our listeners?
I think I am great fan of Dr. Marshall Goldsmith.
Mm-hmm.
So some of my positive thinking comes really from him. And so what got you here? Then
Wonderful. Yeah.
yeah, that's the book which I like. And the other thing which I really started after I started doing my appraise. When I started appraise is when somebody suggested to me is the Principles by Ray Dalio,
Right. Yeah.
and that's a great book, right? And it just tells you the principles with which you need to have your organization. And so that's another book which I said. And in terms of podcast, I listen mostly to A16B, like any founder does, I guess. So that's two things. And in terms of the people, there have been some leaders whom I look to, or the managers who have framed my thought process in over the years. And then the whole positivity, actually, I would say, comes from my high school Tamil teacher who really motivated me to do well in 10th, right? And that is where that thing, when you motivate someone, they really do better. So, uh, and she always used to say, I don't know if you know Tamil, because it's like Ulluvadellam Uyarvullal. So that means whatever you think high, so you would achieve there, right? So that's
Right.
kind of what inspired me throughout, and which keeps me going to till now.
Yeah, yeah, that's fantastic. So we've come to the end of this conversation, but we won't let you go without asking for your hot takes on certain things. This is
Okay.
a section that we ask all our guests, basically where we are asking them what is their hot take on the future relevance of whatever we're going to ask. Right? What do
Okay.
you think is the future relevance of this?
Okay.
So the first one is, what do you think is the future relevance of remote first organizations, or that style of working?
That is going to be the future, I would say. It's a remote first, right? So anything you do, we will have to see how it is going to work remote, and remote, that is where the future is. And even though now companies are saying people are going to come back, but it's still, you have to figure out that's the way companies are going to work, remote first.
Okay,
How it was mobile first
right.
in few years back, now it is remote first.
Okay, what do you think is the future relevance of gig economy? People working as consultants at all levels. We're not talking just about people like Uber drivers or things like that, but even at say project managerial,
Future
architect kind
relevance,
of.
it
Yeah.
is gig economy is the future again, at because people are going to have multiple jobs. And as you see, the younger generation with the Gen Z's, where they come, also they have multiple interests, and they don't want to be tied with I mean, even in our generation people had multiple interests, but we all got tied up with one or two organizations. And now with the gig economy, it gives them that option to do freelancing and work on multiple interests which they have. And it is a future, and every company has to look for how they can have the gig economy workers part of their system, as they are planning for hybrid as well as remote. Now you have your full time and gig workers, so then how do you have your manage the organizations better with this people composition is also something which people have to look for.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last one, what do you think is the future relevance of people managers?
People managers is really going. It is required, and I know even though I would say more than a managers, I think people leaders, I should call them
Mhm.
as, uh, they will be relevant, and that is where we need to make sure it is people leaders are not becoming people leaders because they are technical experts. They will become leaders because you have people coming to them for certain things and they are good at certain soft skills, and where they are the coaches. The people leaders will have to become the coaches, and that is where I see the future is people leaders becoming coaches. And even though I know there are companies which are experimenting with, right, there is no manager, there is no team, there is no performance management, nothing, but then the team is working together. But there will be, that is where I would say people leaders transitioning as people coaches, because there also you will need somebody to coach somebody or whatever. So then the coaching becomes a really a good skill for them to have. So they will transition more becoming, getting the flock together kind of leaders will, what they will be more than the title, I would say.
Okay. On that note, Jashi, I think we covered a whole range of topics today in this conversation. We spoke about what are the indicators of a happy, healthy workforce and workplace. What should managers be looking at? We also spoke about what inspired you to start Appreiz. We spoke about your insights gained over the years. I think this is going to be a great conversation that listeners, like not just founders of small startups, but even I think leaders of the larger GIC kind of sites also can pick something from these things that you've spoken about and apply them at their workplace. So this is really a great conversation that we had, Jayashree.
Yeah, I enjoyed the conversations with you, Harish. It was really great questions to talk to and kind of, look at how things are going in the future as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And enjoyed my time with you.
If you like this, we know you care about your and your team's future relevance. You can find us and click on the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. There are two ways to enter the insider group of friends of CTQ: a Telegram channel where you'll get daily tidbits that help you think about future relevance, and a weekly email newsletter called The Upleveler. We've got some fabulous testimonials from our subscribers. We share special discount codes for CTQ compounds and exclusive invitations to our events on both these channels. Just go to choosetothink.com, that is think with a Q, and you'll find all the links to subscribe. You owe it to yourself.